I think there's a misconception out there about what farmers are out here doing. Some people think, well, those farmers are just out there ruining the environment.
You've seen a lot of commitments by corporate entities, by investments in different companies trying to get greener, obviously from a competitive standpoint, but also just commitments that the consumers want to see or that their employees want to see. This really heated back up with the introduction of the Green New Deal. This was obviously caused some issues for American agriculture. It's not something that Farm Bureau supported.
I don't think they get a lot of credit for what farmers are doing right now to protect the soil.
We are seeing real threats out there. There could be really bad public policy or regulation from the state level to Washington. The challenge of feeding the world, 96% of the population lives outside of the U.S. We've got to continue to be productive.
The farm we're on right here, when we bought it, it was in serious disrepair. Hadn't been mowed 7-8 years. In 2012, we went through a major drought. Water management really became important to us after living through that season. We've changed our operation using biomass cover crops.
We want to make our soils the best they can. And a soil health management system is no-till, residue management, cover crops, and rotating our cash crops, and a living root 365 days a year. There are 1 billion microorganisms in just a tablespoonful of soil. As they eat the organic residue that is on the surface, the corn stalks, the bean stubble, the wheat chaff, and as they ingest these organic materials, they give off sugars and starches and enzymes and a glue-like substance called glomalin. They hold the individual soil particles together and create soil structure so that we can get the water and the air exchange.
So in the fall of 2012, we started planting our first cover crops. By modifying the way we managed our land, we could maybe hold more water and cycle nutrients better. The one thing that we noticed when we went in the field is the soil was softer, it's more pliable. It's like a sponge, ready to take water as it falls. We may not have drought-proofed our farm, but we have sure improved our risk position on the farm. So what's the cost of retaining water? It's pretty low with an environmentally sound plan.
When water runs across the soil, if it's tilled up, you have all the loose particles that are there. And that water will take those loose particles with it, which are your nutrients and your topsoil and everything.
The best way to destroy soil structure is tillage. When we talk about soil health management systems and the benefits to conservation in general, first and foremost, it prevents erosion. Erosion takes chemicals and pesticides with it, which is bad for our groundwater.
When rain falls on our farms, it can do two things. It can either run off or be soaked into the land. Through our cover cropping systems, we've got a residue there that slows that water. It allows water to infiltrate the soil better.
And then that water, as it moves over it, will be filtered out and clean it, what doesn't have all that soil in it.
What water was coming off the fields was clear, and there was less of it.
Prevents erosion, gets water into the soil, makes it plant available to our landowners.
When we first started this, number one goal was moisture retention. What we've seen since then is improved nutrient cycling, lower input costs across the farm, fewer herbicide applications.
If you're using some type of nitrogen growing cover crops, you're putting nitrogen in the soil, potentially reducing your commercial nitrogen fertilizer that you have to use.
We'll decide what cover crop blends that we will put down based on what cash crops we want to grow. A mixture of grasses, legumes, brassicas, and each one of those biotypes feed different microbes in the soil. Herbicides are necessary on our farming operation, but we don't go out to see how many we can apply or use. Fewer is better. We were spraying 3 to 5 times a season to now we're spraying 2 or even less times per acre each season. Some of the secondary things that we saw were fewer passes across the field. And with fewer passes, our fuel costs have went down, and that has significantly lowered our carbon footprint. Cover crops drive the cash crops now. It's a true input on our farm as a true contribution to the budget.
Climate's been a tough issue. It's one that, I think a lot of us feel in agriculture we can be a target, but it's not something we should run from. If you spend any time in Washington, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu, we're trying to figure out how do we set that table. It's through that development of policy that gives marching orders for staff like me to go to Capitol Hill with you, the member, and say, this is what works for agriculture, but these are the things that don't. So if farmers and ranchers aren't engaged either in the conversations around public policy, if we're not telling our story, if we're not engaging with lawmakers, how are they to know to make the right decisions?
With all the climate talk that's out there, where do we need to be as an organization? And I know that American Farm Bureau is committed to being at the table and leading the discussion of what we can implement on our farms. And that's going to be a tough task because we farm different in different areas of the country. They're trying to get a policy that will work for everyone, so it's got to be a pretty broad topic.
It's important to be engaged at all levels of government, and for a lot of our states, we're seeing different actions by governors or legislatures, and for a state farm bureau, they need that policy too, to advocate on your behalf.
Our policy right now is pretty silent. We need to know what our members are thinking about this, and I hope that those county farm bureaus will go back and have those discussions about where do they want Kentucky Farm Bureau to be. Even if it's a conversation at a feed store or at a local restaurant when sitting around drinking coffee in the morning or whatever, that's what we need our membership to do.
Yeah, I really wish the average consumer could see what I've seen over my life, the advancements we've seen in technology and innovation and the practices we're putting on the ground. I mean, every farmer cares about their land. We want to leave it better for the next generation.
Mine and Rebecca's #1 goal in our farming operation is to provide a place for our kids if they like the lifestyle and the vocation of farming. The world that they see is completely different than the one I grew up in, where conventional tillage was common, erosion was plentiful. They don't know anything different than seeing cover crops growing in the field, no-till, soil health, and that terminology. Rather than farming chemically, we're farming biologically.
We continue to produce more while utilizing less. In roughly 2 generations, we've increased our agricultural output by over 287%, while our inputs have remained relatively flat.
As you drive across the state, you see less and less tillage. And I think kind of tillage that is still around, kind of old traditions die hard. My dad did it, his dad did it. Some of our younger farmers, maybe our more progressive farmers, are moving into these soil health management systems.
Just look at what a farmer does now compared to what he did 40 years ago. I mean, they produce so much more, and we use less fertilizers, chemicals, all the things that we do, and we're way more productive now than we've ever been.
That's why investment in agricultural research is key. It's why we need to continue to see innovation.
And all these things, I feel like make a better environment. I believe the Lord created it perfect. A lot of what man's done since is degraded it, but we want to be farming in nature's image.
It's a tough issue, but I think we can handle it, and I know our membership will come up with a plan to be able to do that.